Hi, you're listening to After Dinner Conversations, short stories for long discussions. What that means is we get short stories, we select those short stories, and then we discuss them specifically about the ethics and the morality of the choices the characters and the situations put us in. Why did you do this? What makes you do this? What makes us good people? What's the nature of truth, goodness, all of that sort of stuff. And hopefully we're all better, smarter people for it and learn a little bit about why we think the way we think. So thank you for listening.
Okay, hi, and welcome back to After Dinner Conversation, short stories for long discussions. I am your co-host, Colby, here with Ashley in the next room,
Hello.
and across the internet's Jeremy
Hi, I'm Jeremy.
and Sarah.
Hello.
All right. And so this is going to be a little bit of a disaster in the way of audio because we've got some audio issues that we're dealing with, but we're going to make do. And so if this doesn't sound like a normal podcast, you'll know that know that it's COVID and whatever. Life happens. Things happen. We do the best you can. On the plus side, though, Jeremy, you and Sarah now have amazing podcasting mics, so you're going to sound great. But we,
in theory.
in theory,
Yeah.
but we might not. Okay, so our story, visit our website, afterdinnerconversation.com, get the magazine. We've got 3 anthologies. We've always got writing competitions going. All that stuff, super awesome. Do that. Okay, now, so our story that we've got, assuming that I can find it here, is People Used to Die Every Day by Chad Baker. Okay, so I think that the habit lately has been that I've been the one doing the descriptions. Is that you guys are okay with that? I assume I'll keep doing them.
Yep.
All right, just know that if you ever
I can do it if you want.
Yeah, Ashley, would you like to do it?
Sure.
Cool.
I feel like this one's pretty simple to the point. So I'll give it a whirl. And so basically, they're living in some time in the future. And it's a couple, Peter and Samir. And in the future, all the humans have an implant, which gives them some sort of the equivalent of adrenaline, if you will, some sort of new hormone. They have this implant in them, this new hormone that basically makes it so they never have to sleep. It does all that what sleeping does for you. It does whatever it does to nourish the brain, to rest the mind, to rest the body. And so basically have these timed systems where they never have to sleep, to the point where in your home you do not have a bedroom. There's no need for one. So sleeping has become completely obsolete. And so our character, Peter, has basically decided to start sleeping, where he takes a pill and it allows him to sleep for, they don't specify how long of a period of time, but basically he gets to go and have dreams and basically sleep. When his boyfriend confronts him of why he isn't picking up on his messages, where were you? He confronts him and says, yeah, I was dreaming. And of course, Samir kind of freaked out, why would you waste your time on that? We don't need to dream anymore. It's useless time wasted. And finally, after some time, Samir kind of breaks down and was like, okay, well, I want to understand what you're going through. I want to understand why you want to dream. Apparently it's important to you because Peter is now in love with this whole process of sleeping and dreaming. And so they decide to basically sleep together, literally both take this medicine and lay down and have dreams. Only to find out that Samir in the process does a total freak out. This concept of closing your eyes and drifting off to a magical land was just so scary and threatening for him that he wakes up in a fright, and in the process wakes up Peter. And so Samir is just kind of I'm out of here. This is not working. And Peter was okay with Samir leaving, But then Peter realizes as we've probably all experienced, when you try to lay down and fall asleep and you can't sleep. Kind of that restlessness of trying to lay there and trying to fall back asleep, but you can't. So that's a very simple kind of overview of the story. If anybody has something to add, please do. But I just wanted to give a little bit of the story, and then maybe we can add on it.
Okay, so
I think that was really good.
Yeah, I think that was a really good summary. So one thing I don't remember you mentioning, and I turned off your video just to try and save some bandwidth here. Did you mention that it's illegal to sleep now too? And like it's kind of like medical marijuana, where like there's a few states where it's still legal, but mostly now it's illegal to sleep.
That's a great point. I did not mention that. Yes, it is now illegal to do if they find you yawning, bloodshot eyes, looking tired. That is not a good situation. They will actually, quote unquote, drug test you to see if you've been, taking something that'll make you to show basically that you are tired, because you should not be tired. You should be fully pumped awake. There's no reason for you to ever feel tired. Actually, being tired is one of the things that Samir was one of the side effects of taking this pill. It takes a while to kick in. And so he gets to that point a couple hours later after taking the pill. He's like, I'm exhausted. Why do people want this part? He's like, well, you got to go through the side effects of feeling tired to get to the dream state. So I thought that was kind of a funny aspect. But yeah, dreams are awesome. But in order to get to dreams, you have to be tired enough to fall asleep. So it's just kind of a funny way of looking at it.
If I'm remembering it correctly, doesn't he like take a pill while he's at work that basically is an inhibitor of the thing that keeps you from needing dreams? So he takes it while he's at work. And so after like 6 or 8 hours of being at work, he comes home with this inhibitor in his system. And consequently, he's like, oh my God, I feel terrible. I feel miserable. And the guy's like, yeah, because you are tired. Like, that's what tired is. Now we can go to sleep. Now that you've had this inhibitor that sort of has turned off the thing that keeps you from needing sleep. Does that sound about right?
That's correct.
That's correct.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And Jeremy, Sarah, you have anything you wanted to add?
Is it that sleeping is illegal, or is it inhibiting the work that your health cartridge is doing? Because it's not just sleep. I thought it was interesting that when their blood alcohol reaches a certain level, so drinking seems to be a big part of this culture.
Oh, yeah.
And when their blood alcohol reaches a certain level, something kicks in and counteracts it so that they don't get the effects of being drunk or hungover or anything like that. So they're not allowed to do anything that would stop the work of these health cartridges that they have implanted.
Yeah,
it wasn't even just
it was really
that.
Yeah.
No, there was a woman who was frightened, and so when she was too frightened, it basically gave her a sedative.
That too.
Which is one of the people that Peter works at a place that basically makes recommendations for certain movies and TV programs. And there was a woman who's a cook and a chef, and their program recommended that she watch some show. And unfortunately, it was like a horror, and it made her central nervous system basically go all wacko, that it automatically gave her a sedative. So I don't think it's just alcohol. I think it's basically controlling your entire hormonal system is kind of the way that it feels like it goes.
Yeah, it seemed...
What an interesting way to control people. That's so...
Yeah, I didn't even think about that part of the story, but you're right. It seems like you have something medically injected in you that regulates everything, right? Keeps you from getting too excited, from getting too angry, getting too drunk, and so getting sleepy. And so there's like this ongoing medical hacking going on to your body to keep everything okay.
Yeah, it's pretty Brave New World.
Yeah, it's a little, no, it's all that, it's like a dystopian story, of course. So for me, the reason I found this story really interesting, I mean, there's a couple things I thought were really good about it. One, I thought the story was very well written. And we were talking about this before we started. I also thought it was really cool that they were gay characters and that had nothing to do with the story. And like, I'm glad that we're finally in a place where like being gay doesn't have to be the story point. That actually is a really cool thing I thought about the story. But the reason I personally really liked the story is I was really fascinated with two aspects of the story that I'm curious to hear all y'all's opinions on. One is there's a line in it where he says, where the guy says, well, we don't need to dream. And the guy's like, well, don't you want to know? And he's like, I don't, like, we don't need gallstones or going out to the outhouse to go poop. Like, no, like these are like the downsides to being human, the biological downsides to being human that we don't need to have exist, right? Why wouldn't we sort of craft ourselves to get rid of the parts of the physicality of being human that we find senseless? I'm curious because I don't think any of you would be like, yeah, at least once you should have to poop in an outhouse. Like if somehow we could just solve that problem. So
right.
I'm curious what you guys think about that. Is there something about the physicality of being human that's required? And is dreaming one of them?
No, it's an interesting concept. Really the idea of getting past the biological limitations of humanity, of being human. And there is certainly there always has been a drive to reduce these things. And this falls in line with that. If we wouldn't have to sleep, if we wouldn't have to eat.
Right. Like if I could take a no pooping pill,
bodily functions.
Like
no eating, no pooping pill.
If I could take if I could just take a pill that was just like, yeah, no, I don't know where it goes, but you just don't have to go potty anymore. I'd be like, yeah, I don't feel like I'm gaining anything as a human being by having to go potty. Right? Like I'm perfectly happy to get rid of that part of my humanity.
Do you feel like it's time wasted?
I don't know if I feel like it's time wasted, but more importantly, it's a purely physical thing. Like it just like it would be like if I could get rid of having to trim my fingernails, like or bite my fingernails in my case. Like I would just get rid of it just because like it has nothing to do with the purpose of my existence, right? It's just purely a physical thing. You could at least make the argument for eating that there's a social aspect to it, but of course that social aspect could be easily replaced by something else.
Right. What I think is interesting about all of these things is, and really the crux of it is, but I guess 2 points to it. Is it acceptable? Is it desirable to strive to limit or remove these biological considerations? Is that a worthwhile thing to do as a society? Because yes, you can make people more productive if you get rid of these, biological needs.
And do you have an opinion on this?
And then secondly, how much of it should be legislated as a requirement? So I feel like, yes, it's a worthwhile pursuit, to the ability. And there are probably things, jobs or industries where they could make it a requirement. And I know the military has always looked into how do we reduce the amount of time soldiers have to sleep.
Sure.
And not really because it's wasted time, but because it removes their effectiveness.
Yeah.
If you're sleeping, you're not on watch or
you're
whatever.
Fighting.
I don't know. I mean, there are reasons to do it.
Well,
right.
There was a whole book. There was
sleep
a whole book
deprivation
about
is a
that.
serious problem.
Right. Yeah, there was a whole book about that, how the Nazis would give drugs to their soldiers. They give them speed.
Oh my God, they were all on meth.
They were all on meth
Yeah.
because they could fly longer, you could fight longer. It was like a whole thing.
I think that's actually why they got into this whole program in the first place, was Imagine, if you're trying to be productive at your job, or you have a really, goal that you're working towards, you eliminate sleep. You're like, yes, please. I want to never feel tired. I want to just work on this project. But consequently, what we end up seeing in the story is, okay, so right now we put limitations on how long people should work as a percentage of what we assume is someone's wake period, right? How long they are awake. Well, as soon as you eliminate sleeping, it doesn't give you more free time in the day. Instead, all they did was they just make you work longer hours. So I think
Right.
that's what it comes down
Yeah.
to, is basically how can we make humans more productive as a portion of like the number of hours in a day that they're awake. Well, if we want to make them more productive, make them not sleep, then we can work them more.
Right, and that's a very capitalism.
Yeah.
Primarily, you can blame that on the American capitalism or industrial capitalism, and that's a separate thing to talk about. So I feel like here's a good example. I have looked for ways to do this, like driving long distances. I have a problem where it's hard to drive long distances because at some point you get tired and it's either you have to stop or there's a tendency to fall asleep. And it would be nice if there were something that removed drowsiness without being like speed.
Sure.
So there would be nice if there were something like that. But I don't want it to be a requirement.
You don't want it to be a government mandate.
Exactly. Or a corporate mandate. It shouldn't be, if you want this job, it's definitely an 80-hour work week. Yeah.
So if there was a job that was like, you only work 40 hours a week, but it's 40 hours in a row. But then the rest of the week you get off.
No, I mean, okay, that's a different. Yeah, that might be nice.
You might never get promoted though, because if you're the one that's not taking this medication, whereas somebody else is, if they're able to stay up and get all the work done in a day, of course they're going to get promoted. They have more free time to work on more projects, take on more work, and therefore get promoted ahead of you.
And I think for me,
right.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, the lack of sleep doesn't become a competitive edge anymore if everybody's got the ability to not sleep.
But this is sort of the race to the bottom thing, right? Which is, even if it wasn't legislated, it would very quickly be required, right? And it's the same way where it's like, look, they talked about how they were
in a corporate sense.
From a corporate sense, right? Look, you're right. We don't require you to do this, but am I going to promote the person who takes the extracurricular material and takes the public speaking class at night and, can work, when we need them, and can take my phone call whenever I need them to take my phone call, and can get an extra, certification in whatever C++ or whatever. You end up, if it's available, someone will take it. And if someone takes it, that means they're going to get opportunities that you didn't by not taking it.
Right.
So
what is the advantage to sleep in this story? He dreams.
So that's
right?
the second part of it, right? Yeah. So
that's really what he's after.
Right. He's after the dreaming. And so I think that was the two parts that I found interesting about the story. The first one was, from a biological standpoint, would we just get rid of the things that serve no purpose to our essence, like cutting your fingernails, right? Or going to the bathroom. And then I think that brings up the second question, is dreaming one of them, right? Or does dreaming serve a very different purpose than cutting your fingernails? And I think that's why the character in the story finds dreaming useful, is he doesn't just find it clever. I think in some ways he finds it human, or something that it's adding value to his life, right? In a way that going to the outhouse doesn't.
Yeah, I can see that. And you could argue that, and I suppose there's an argument around that. Is the cocktail they're getting actually taking care of all the brain functions that dreaming does?
Yeah.
And if it is, then why is this so therapeutic for him? Why is Is it just the experience that he finds appealing, or is it actually making his brain healthier? And that's something the story doesn't go into. It's an unanswered question.
Yeah.
But I think it's a good question, and I really do like how how the author describes dreams in here.
Yeah.
And especially the all the aspects of it that we know, like you wake up from a dream or you're woken from a dream, and then when you're going back to sleep, you're trying to get back, or you're focusing on that and trying to get back into the dream. And I feel like we've probably all done that. Trying to go back to sleep and really just mulling on this dream we just woke up from. So I found that really interesting and relatable in the story, is how he described all of that dreaming process.
So let me ask you all a quick question that goes to this. So let's say that the biology of dreaming is of sleep is taken care of, right? It doesn't make you become a crazy person. Like you're somehow or another, there are no side effects. There's the one aspect of dreaming to me that it doesn't matter if I don't need to dream, and that is the idea that it helps me, even consciously, not just subconsciously. Let's say the subconscious is taken care of. Consciously think about things in ways that I hadn't thought about before, right? It helps me think about like, well, why did I dream? Why am I stressed out? Like my dreams tell me that I'm stressed out right now, so I must be stressed out. I just didn't know it. Or why do I keep dreaming about this thing? Or sometimes it just inspires you, right? Because some random thing comes up in your dream and you're like, yeah, that's clever. And I wonder if that can be replaced through like meditation, through sort of yoga or lucid dreaming, or doing whatever it is and my hunch is the answer is no, but that's just totally me shooting off at the mouth.
Right, because you're dreaming. In dreaming, your brain is your subconscious brain is really tapping into all of your experiences.
Yeah.
And that may not necessarily, and I don't know. I haven't done a lot of meditation or other things like that, so I don't know if you can really tap into the subconscious in the same way.
Yeah. I don't know.
If I recall correctly, there are a couple of singers that wake up inspired from their dreams to write their songs, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
Or they hear a melody in their dreams and it's kind of like stuck in their head the rest of the day. So there is something to be gained from our dreams. Everyone wants to look for messages in them, or try to figure out life's direction or what have you, but I think there is a benefit to it. In this particular society that the story is talking about, it seems like everyone has control over their lives. Like every single minute of every day, you have control over what you're going to do. There is no time when you succumb to your body, right? Like you literally cannot go any farther. Like sleeping is the ultimate. As much as I want to stay awake, there is no fighting it. And I feel like in this society where you never experience biological, a sense to stop, especially on every single day basis, I feel like when Peter discovers this drift off magical land, that must be really freeing to basically, kind of Jesus take the wheel sort of a thing, just kind of like give in and let something else overcome your thoughts, overcome your body at the same time.
Right. Yeah. When you're sleeping, you're not in control. And sleeping is an incredibly vulnerable state as well, right? Mm-hmm. So I thought my favorite part of this story was the different descriptions of what sleep is. So for Peter, he's talking about his dreams and the sensation of falling asleep and kind of floating away to this dreamland. But Samir, he wanted to sleep because he thought it might be romantic. That I thought was very sweet and touching, right. Actually.
Well, and actually, I think we're getting to one of the points the author's trying to make is that there is a vulnerability to it, and that's what Samir couldn't handle was the letting go, and they'll point to the title. Effectively, you're letting yourself die at this point by going to sleep. You're just letting go of everything, and it is a very vulnerable action if it's not something you're used to doing.
Hi, this is Colby, and you are listening to After Dinner Conversation, short stories for long discussions. But you already knew that, didn't you? If you'd like to support what we do at After Dinner Conversation, head on over to our Patreon page at patreon.com/After Dinner Conversation. That's right, for as little as $5 a month, you can support thoughtful conversations like the one you're listening to. And as an added incentive for being a Patreon supporter, you'll get early access to new short stories and ad-free podcasts, meaning you'll never have to listen to this blurb again. At higher levels of support, you'll be able to vote on which short stories become podcast discussions, and you'll even be able to submit questions for us to discuss during these podcasts. Thank you for listening, and thank you for being the kind of person that supports thoughtful discussion.
That I thought was very sweet and touching,
right.
Actually.
Well, and actually, I think we're getting to one of the points the author's trying to make is that there is a vulnerability to it, and that's what Samir couldn't handle was the letting go, and, they'll point to the title. Effectively, you're letting yourself die at this point by going to sleep. You're just letting go of everything. And it is a very vulnerable action if it's not something you're used to doing.
And you can see how the two characters, based on the way they sort of describe each other and talk to each other, like how the character who does dream seems to be more willing to sort of experience new things and is maybe a little bit less goal-oriented and more life-oriented, whereas opposed to the boyfriend, it seems like he's much more like got a to-do list every moment of his life, right? And he's the master of his own fate, and he's controlling everything. And so I assumed that the thing, when I read it the first time, that the thing that would scare him off would not be that he dreamt. It would be what he dreamt, right? My assumption was he'd have a nightmare and he'd be like, I don't like nightmares. I don't ever want to dream again. The equivalent of like having a bad acid trip or something. But that wasn't his fear, right? His fear was, I felt myself slipping away. I felt my control slipping away. And that was the part that scared him before he even had to deal with what if I have a bad dream. And I thought I'm curious to hear what you guys think about this. I don't think this relationship lasts for that reason, not for the dreaming reason, not for the dreaming reason, but for the different perspectives on the role of control in your own future and life.
So it's a similar analogy to people who have had bad acid trips. And specifically acid, where it is a loss of control. So I think that's what turns a lot of people off to hallucinogens specifically is there is you have to let go and let this trip to lose control to the trip, basically. And so it's an interesting corollary to that. So they're treating sleep as if it is this drug because you're losing control.
Yeah, I saw a lot of similarities between the way he described dreaming to the way I've heard people describe taking psychedelics, right? That you lose control, that you can't control it, that sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad, but it helps you understand yourself better. Like, it doesn't affect my work performance, blah, blah, blah. Like I heard a lot. There were a lot of interesting similarities there, where I could hear those same arguments repeating with two people talking about, mushrooms or acid or something else,
sleeping,
or peyote or something.
Right.
I think one of the cool aspects too with Peter was he didn't seem satisfied with his life. He was not interested in his job. He didn't seem, in love with his boyfriend. And so dreaming was an escape from reality. They keep talking about their one vacation they took, I think, to Iceland. And that was the only time he felt kind of at bliss, because he felt like he was in another world, if you will. They're looking up at the northern lights, and it was very surreal and magical. And so I feel like for him, dreaming was a way to escape reality because they have no other way to do so otherwise. Um, we get to play imagination in our mind when we dream. I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I can revisit the same dream, the same situation. And that can sometimes be fun. You can change up the situation. He pretended he was on a boat. So you can do all these different things without actually being there. And so it was exciting. He was, there's a house and there's a door. It was kind of like make believe and fun for him. And it was an escape from this world where every minute should count. They mentioned a billboard where why sleep when you could work out, you could, meet up with friends, you could work harder, get promoted. He's just not interested in that at all. And so it was a way for him to escape the world that he was living in.
Mm.
No, I think that's a really good point. And, a really good, again, referencing their trip to Iceland, because it was an escape from their daily routine. And so that's and they didn't have to do anything. They were okay just laying there looking at the northern lights. And so sleep is effectively is very similar to that experience for him. Mm-hmm. I think that's a really good point.
So let's continue. I have a question for you all, just to go through a few of our questions here. Would you take this pill if this pill existed? Now, there's a couple of things we need to understand. Number one, that it's not government mandated. You can take it or not take it. And it has absolutely no ramifications by you taking it from a mental, physical standpoint. You really just are just exactly yourself. You just don't sleep. Would you start taking it on a regular basis, or would you not?
I don't know if I would take it on a regular basis. I would definitely take it as needed. But I would have issues if it were, again, either, company mandated or government mandated. But certainly, again, there were times where it seemed, again, like driving long distances. That would be a useful reason to do this. And again, looking at it as, well, if you wanted to be a truck driver, you would have to do this because then you could not have to stop for rest. But yeah, so I guess it depends. But probably, yes, I would do that.
Ashley?
If I could take it on my own, if I decide to, sure. In certain situations, for sure. I think the harder question would be if you were automatically getting it pumped into your system and taking the sleeping pill was an option. That would be a lot harder because you take the pill and it starts kicking in 6 hours later. Like, say you're like, oh, no, today I'm going to dream. Like, I'm excited to dream. And you take the pill and, like, say something happens and you're like, oh, no, I need to stay awake tonight. And all of a sudden you're like, can't help it. Already took pill, going to fall asleep. Like, that would be really hard. I think if it was the reverse, I think it would definitely be much easier to manage if you were like, I want to stay awake tonight. Just like we do currently, we take caffeine, we, whatever stimulants to stay awake longer. We already are accustomed to doing that. I think that would be easier to do than the opposite, taking something to make you fall asleep. But to answer your question, yes, in certain situations, it would be awesome.
24-hour bike races.
That's exactly what I was getting to. No, this has been interesting. There's been a couple of endurance runners who literally are out there trying to set new fastest known times. I most recently think of Courtney DeWalter going around Lake Tahoe, and I think it was over 3 days, and she slept a total of like 25 minutes, in 5-minute increments or what have you. And it'd be like, I wonder what would unlock the potential of humans athletically if you could eliminate the sleep factor, because she would have kept going, and who knows how much faster if you could eliminate the sleep aspect. But I definitely think that there are times when it would be warranted. But I personally like dreaming. It is a toss up though. Like, are you going to get a nightmare? Is it going to be a fun one? Is it one that you're even going to remember? But to get that benefit of a dream, you also have to have the side effect of feeling tired. And when I feel tired, I don't like that feeling. So I think they kind of go hand in hand. It's not just being able to sleep, but also willingly taking on that tired aspect. So I probably would occasionally, but not all the time.
Sarah, what about you?
Oh, I could do without sleep for sure. I think I identified with Samir. I would really love to have all of the time in the world to do all of the things.
Yeah.
I'm kind of that personality, I guess.
Wow. So I really, I'm surprised by y'all's answers.
Are you the one holdout?
I'm surprised at your answers. Actually, I thought you guys
Really?
would assume I'm the one who's like, yeah, dream's a waste of time, and then all of you guys would be like, dreaming is nice, it helps me, and you guys are all willing to give up sleeping and dreaming. I am not. I think that
What?
No, but-
way. You are all about Mr. Productivity. There's no way.
Yeah, but
There's no way.
but let me finish my thought here though. Here's
Okay.
the thing though, right? Is I think dreaming and sleeping is productivity. That's the thing. Right? Now could I do now if I could because obviously you're asleep for whatever 6 hours a night, but you only dream for what, like 45 minutes of that. If I could get rid of the non-dreaming part of sleeping, yeah, I'm cool with that. I'm cool with getting rid of the 6 hours of where I'm not doing anything. But that period of 10 minutes or 45 minutes or whatever the REM sleep part is, like that really helps me become a more useful, productive person. And so I would not, even if somebody said like, oh, you can do a half-hour meditation a day and get those same effects, you can still have that sort of lucid meditation or whatever, I wouldn't trust it. I feel like I really believe that there's a value in dreaming because it helps us, I don't know, it just helps me at least understand what I need to do when I wake up, if that makes sense.
Right. Well, but Colby, none of us said we would permanently, well, Sarah may have, but I think Ashley and I didn't say we would permanently
Sarah's
take this
also a
and
mother
never
of
dream.
2 kids, so we understand
Two
why.
small children. Yeah, my time is stretched pretty thin. I just find that I push back against sleep in general, and I don't really remember my dreams regularly.
No, I think it's fair to say every mother with a couple of young kids is like, yeah, I could do without sleep. As long as my kids sleep, then it's cool. Then I get some time to myself.
That is absolutely true, Colby, right there. Yeah.
Well, and there's a point. It's like, all right, kids, you're going to sleep, but I'm not. So now I can do things
that's an interesting question.
Do.
In this society,
what are they doing to their children?
Forced to stay awake 24 hours a day too?
Yeah.
Like, at what point do you start this?
They had the young
sleep
girl.
Is when you grow.
They had the young. Well, that's the whole thing. Is apparently this medicine takes care of everything that happens when you're sleeping. So they had the one young girl picking up flowers at like midnight, and they're walking down the street, and they had switched out the light bulbs to make it appear more daylight. They're brighter.
Oh man!
Never had the girl walking down the street. So it seems like it's kind of become the
universal
norm. Yeah.
They've become a 24-hour society.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. I think that's true. Because you remember
from birth?
Man. You remember their work shifts
not
too.
Kids under 12. No.
Yeah. Huh.
And then you wonder what the industry of childcare is like.
Yeah.
Entertaining children 24/7.
I would watch this movie, by the way. This is a movie I would watch. If somebody, like the same way we talked about the time movie where time is like currency. We had a story about that, but then we were like, yeah, it's just like that movie with whatever Justin Bieber or whatever the guy's name was that was in it. The singer.
Justin Timberlake.
Yeah.
Time.
Right. Out of time. Yeah. I feel like this was another one where like if they made this as a sort of sci-fi dystopian futurist, like I would watch that movie. Maybe not 2 hours of it, but I'd watch 90 minutes.
So what's really interesting was the parallel between taking psychedelics and actual dreaming, because I'm used to dreaming. For me, it's not scary. I think just because I've done it obviously I've done it my entire life, but the thought for me of taking psychedelics is frightening. And it's the exact same sort of a little bit thing as dreaming, except possibly, depending on what you're taking and blah, blah, blah. But I willingly relinquish control to fatigue and brain fog, and I need to fall asleep. But I think, taking something and kind of going to this otherworldly mind state, it's scary. But it is very similar. It's like weird. I'm so willing to be like, yeah, no, sleeping. This is a thing. This is totally cool. My brain's going to go have a party and make believe while I dream. But for me to take something and have me also experience similarness in a way, I'm like, that's scary.
I think the argument that someone would make is, of course, that, and I don't know if I agree with this, but this is the argument they'd make, is that dreaming is natural and psychedelics are not. Even though, of course, mushrooms are natural and peyote is natural. But I think that's the argument people would make, is that, like, if God had wanted you to take psychedelics, he would have, I don't know, made them taste like chocolate.
Made them grow naturally.
Right, he would have made them grow naturally, which they actually do. Right.
Right. And if you talk to anthropologists, we've been taking psychedelics for tens of thousands of years. Here's my counter to your dreams being useful, is I feel like most of the dreams I remember, I'm trying to get things to add up in Excel. They're all work-related dreams.
No wonder you don't want to dream. Oh my God.
Because they're all work-related.
Oh my God. No wonder you don't want to dream. Like, okay, just last night, like literally just last night, I had a dream that I was I was at a fancy dinner, and I was all dressed up in a suit, nice tie, nice everything. And I looked down, and the right-hand side of my pants, from like my hip, my suit pants, from my hip all the way to my ankle, had a cut in them. So like my whole leg is hanging out and the pants are hanging off. And I kept trying to tell people, like, hey, I need to like go change my pants. They're like, oh, no. Haven't you ever seen how women have a slit down the side of their dress? Like, it's the same thing.
It's sexy, Colby.
Yeah, it's like, it's the same thing. Like, it's okay to show a little bit of leg. And I'm like, but these are meant to be pants. It's not a dress. And they're like, but haven't you seen women with the dresses where it's like a pant dress, but there's a slit down the side? And I'm like, and I think it's going to look unprofessional. And they were going through this whole thing. And the whole dream was all the stress of this. And I woke up and I was just like, I wonder what I was supposed to learn from that. Like, what's going on in my life that I'm trying to figure that out.
I've definitely had dreams where things in my subconscious come to the surface, and I'm like, I didn't realize that was really going on in my head. And
what am I not addressing?
Now I need to address that and think about that.
Right.
But do you ever have the dream where you're falling and it wakes you up?
When I was a kid,
as you're falling asleep.
A long time.
I still have that dream all the time.
It's like a kick. I'm trying to kick or something, trying to jump.
Yeah.
And that's what wakes me up, is
the sensation of falling wakes me up, and I jump. Ooh, I don't like that. So I thought, when I was reading this story, when Samir woke up, I thought that's what he was experiencing, is that falling sensation. Because I remember talking to my mother about it when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she said it's why we say falling asleep. I thought that was cute. But yeah, I was like, if you've never experienced that before in your entire life, that would be really scary. Yeah. And you would never want to do it again.
Yeah. Well, and maybe that is, and that was he was unable to relinquish that control because he kept kicking himself awake.
Yeah. And it's you get an adrenaline rush from it too. It's really kind of, I could see why Samir would never want to do that again.
Yeah. I understand why Jeremy would never want to dream again if all he dreamt about was work.
I know, right? Excel
it's
spreadsheets.
Like 80%. Every now and then there's a good, science fiction storyline.
I've got one last question.
Oh, I should write this book.
Right. By the way, I want to interject for 1 sec here. So by the way, Frankenstein, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, was entirely written in a dream. Like, she literally went to sleep, dreamt the whole book woke up and wrote an outline of it
That's-
and then turned
yeah.
around and wrote the whole book from based on her outline.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
My dad has woken up and written down songs.
Yeah.
And then has turned them into like written down song ideas and like most of the lyrics already worked out
Right.
from a dream, and then writes it out and makes a song, and it's good.
All right. So before, this is the thing I wanted to get to though, and I'm going to give each of you guys a second to talk. I know it's a little bit been harder because we're all separated here a little bit, but one of the questions that was written that we did not get to at all, that I just wanted to at least mention if anyone wants to chime in on it. The question was, would you be willing to take part in an illegal activity that your partner was doing so that you could share the experience with them? Oh, now it's quiet.
Yes.
All right. I'm assuming it's not
Depending
like
on the illegal activity.
yeah, assuming it's not like beating up a homeless person or something like that.
I was gonna say, like, how illegal are we going? Is it like murder? Like, no, that's not.
But you really
thing.
want to experience this?
No.
All right. So, is there an example of like maybe it's not appropriate to say an example, but I don't know. But you can think of a scenario where you do something illegal.
The scenarios would be socially acceptable activities that are illegal.
Okay.
And you could probably say we've all done those, and now pot is legal. So in Arizona, at least. So it's not something that,
okay. So if you did,
that would be a good example of things we may have done in our youth that were illegal, but we did them to have the experience with a partner.
Okay.
What about shoplifting?
Oh, that's a good one.
That's pretty mild. So what if
Doesn't really hurt anybody.
Ashley was really into shoplifting because of like the excitement you feel when you get away with it?
Nope, I would turn around and give it right back. I would be like, I'm so sorry.
This is the what if for Colby.
Oh.
Like, would you be like, okay, well, I want to see what you're experiencing here with this rush from getting away with some trivial thing like stealing a chapstick or something.
So,
would you do that, Colby?
Yeah, it's a great question. So as Jeremy was talking, I was trying to think up scenarios of like, what's my criteria of what I would do to experience with someone I loved, but not something that I would say no to. And I think the difference is it would have to be something that was, I would be willing to do something that was illegal, but I did not personally find morally objectable. So shoplifting, I personally find morally objectable. So whether it was legal or illegal, I wouldn't do it because I don't think it's right to take something from someone else. However, if my partner was like, hey, I like to go to the top of buildings and like base jump off the buildings, and obviously jumping off of a construction crane is illegal, I'd be like, why? I don't even think that should be illegal. The only person who's going to get killed is me. Like that I would do, right? Or if it was marijuana and somebody was like, look, I personally didn't think it should have ever been illegal. And so, and so if my partner was like, hey, would you do this for the first time with me? I'm like, yeah, I haven't done it because I don't want to break the law, but I'm willing to do it because I think the law is stupid. But if I believe in the law, then I would not break the law to share an experience with my partner, if that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's what I was trying to say.
Okay, yeah. So, like I don't like the reason I don't beat up a homeless person is not because it's illegal. It's because I don't think you should beat up I don't think you should beat up a homeless person.
So do you think that Samir in the story is just he's pushing back against Peter's desire to sleep simply because it's illegal? Like that's the only reason?
Are you asking me?
And he comes around because he decides it's not morally objectionable?
I think Samir's pushing back because he's doing what the social norm is. Mm-hmm. And so to his point of view, it's not that it's illegal, it's that it is a waste of time. That it's objectionable in that sense. Not morally, but why would you do this? Because you could be doing so many more useful and effective things.
Do you think marijuana is the direct comparison here?
I think it's meant to be in the story.
Yeah.
Because you look at the advertisements that they use for sleep, they're exactly the same advertisements they used in the 80s and 90s about drugs. Like, don't be a loser.
Oh, that's true.
Don't waste your time. You're going to end up, homeless and blah. And like only people that have nothing else going on in their lives smoke pot, and all of like the advertisements for not dreaming were exactly the same as marijuana was in the 80s. and 90s.
Yeah. No, that's a good point.
Sarah, what about you? Or do you have a different take than mine? Like, is there something that would you never do it? Would you sometimes do it?
Yeah, there's all kinds of lines there. I feel like, yeah, some things, but
okay.
I feel a lot like you do, Colby. Like, there's definitely a limit at which I find some things personally reprehensible, and if I found out my partner was doing those things, I probably would want to reconsider that relationship to begin with, rather than join them in experiencing those activities.
Yeah.
So I feel like, in Samir and Peter's relationship, Samir had to come around to like, well, I want to be with him, and this is really not that big of a deal. Yeah. So I'm going to try it.
So you're saying you'd shoplift.
Yeah. I was just trying to think of something that like didn't really hurt anybody, but it was illegal and would have to make you think about like whether or not you would do that. I don't think I would shoplift.
Ashley,
so
what about you?
Something I'm teaching my students this right now, and this is direct peer pressure. Personally, I would never want a partner, a friend, family member, anybody to do something that they don't want to do themselves. I never want them to do something just for me. That's the big draw for me. I'm like, this is what I'm experiencing, this is what I enjoy doing, but if you're going to do it, do not do it for my sake. Do it because you want to experience it yourself, that there is some gain in it for you.
So, Ashley, do you think that Samir came around because he found something in it for himself?
Like he was like, no, I think he,
or he was just doing it for Peter.
I think he was just doing it for Peter. I think he talked to his therapist. And his therapist was like, you sound really down, like harsh on Peter. Maybe you should, try it before you knock it or whatever. But I would never want to do it because my partner asked me to do it. I would absolutely need to do something because it's something that I wanted to do, not because I was pressured into doing it or asked to do it.
I kind of think Samir did find something for himself in the whole idea of sleeping. And I think it's probably because I identify with his whole, like, it's romantic, like cuddling doing and stuff like that. Yeah. I kind of think he did find something, but I agree with Ashley too. There was a lot of pressure there from different people.
All right, that's probably a good stopping point here. We're getting to be our time. Hey, you've been listening to After Dinner Conversation, short stories for long discussions. Check out our website, afterdinnerconversation.com. Like and subscribe. We've got a Patreon page. If you go to Amazon, you can get our books. We have a monthly magazine you can get for $1.95 a month. Just get it on our website. You can also read our stories everywhere that magazines are available. Readly, Magster, Zinio, through Libby, through your local library. There's loads of options now. And thank you for joining us, and we will see you next week. Bye.
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 If you've enjoyed listening to this, please like and subscribe. It helps us out a ton. The vast majority of people haven't liked and subscribed, which means maybe it shows up in your algorithm, maybe it doesn't. So don't leave that to chance. Just go ahead and hit that button, and we'd sure appreciate that. And that way we can keep doing what we're doing, and you're not left to the whims of some algorithm. Thanks.